In this lesson, we'll start by exploring wireframe chaining. Chaining is the term we use in Mastercam for selecting geometry in order to machine or extrude. I'm going to go through a few simple examples by creating geometry on the screen and then seeing how it gets chained. We'll start by going to the Wireframe tab and simply drawing some geometry. One thing I'll do here is I'll turn on multi-line, which allows me to click once, click again, and continue creating lines. Now, as you can see, in this case, I drew a geometry that, in theory, should have a closed shape. I'm going to start the chaining menu by creating a toolpath. Before I do that, I need to select a machine, so I'm just going to pick the default machine from the mill pull-down. Now, we'll go into toolpath creation in future lessons, but for now, we're just going to start a contour toolpath, which will bring up the chaining menu. When the wireframe chaining dialog appears, you'll notice we have a prompt over here that says Select Contour Chain 1. Pay attention to this prompt as it will change depending on what you are chaining. Within the wireframe chaining dialog, we have wireframe chaining, and then we could also switch to solid chaining. Now in this case, we don't have any solid geometry on our screen, and we're going to explore solid chaining in a future lesson. So for now, we'll switch back to wireframe chaining. And the default method is typically set to chain. And the way chaining works is you simply select on geometry to start the chain. Specifically, you select on an area of the geometry where you want it to start. So if I want it to start on this end here, I select closer to that end. So I would not select here. I would select here. And as you can see, the green arrow starts here. Mastercam goes to the end of this line and it finds the beginning of a next line, so it continues on until it either no longer has an option or it finds the beginning of the line again. I'm going to use the unselect option in the wireframe chaining dialog to turn that off or to unselect it, and then I'm going to select it again. Now let's select over here. So selecting here, it should go to the closest endpoint and then continue on the geometry selected. Let's hit unselect. Now let's go the other way. Instead of selecting here, which goes clockwise, we'll select down here, which is closer to this endpoint. So if I select down here, now it'll go counterclockwise. So the location of where you select indicates the direction of the chain. The direction will also indicate cutter compensation. So if you're walking down this line, to the left will be over here, and to the right will be over here. So cutter comp to the left will be there, and cutter comp to the right will be there. If I hit undo here or unselect, and then select the geometry going the other way, now we're walking down the line this way. Left compensation will be over here, and right compensation will be over here. Now let's hit unselect here, and I'm going to hit cancel. And no, I don't want to keep this operation. I'll create an additional piece of geometry that goes right through the middle. Now, if I go into my toolpaths contour menu, and if I select this geometry here, the question is, what happens when it gets to this intersection right here? Well, let's investigate that. If I select here, we expect the chain to start down here, but it does not stop here. And the reason is because this line right here that's being shown by the mouse is a solid entity, and there's no breakpoint right here. So imagine this being a highway or a freeway, and you're on a bridge. You cannot get off the highway or the freeway unless there's an exit ramp. So if I undo this, and I select from here, you'll notice it continues and goes right past the other line. If I unselect and select this line, it starts here, it recognizes an open chain, and it finishes here. So this is where the red arrow comes in. This is the end of the chain. And you can see from the prompt, select an entity to start a new chain, which would be chain number 2, or modify the active chain. So we could select chain number 2 like that. Now we have 2 chains. Let's hit cancel, and no. If I wanted this chain to come down here and then go right, I would have to break this geometry. To do that, I go into the Wireframe tab, and right next to Trim Entities, which we've seen and used before, is Break 2 Pieces, and then we also have Break at Intersection and Break Many and Break at Points. If I choose Break at Intersection, and I select this entity and that entity and that entity, and then hit Enter when done, it will break all that geometry at the intersection. So as you can see now, these 2 lines and this line is broken as well. So now let's right click, clear colors, go back to toolpaths, go back to contour, and now let's explore how the chaining works. So if I select right here, it starts at the closest, moves towards the end of the chain, and it sees an intersection. And there are 3 options. It can go right, it can continue going straight, and it can go left. Well, that's what these options down here under the branches section is called. So right now, if I was to choose next, it would follow the red arrow. If I hit the button for adjust, it alternates between the 3 solutions. So I could hit adjust until I find the direction I want it to go, and then I could hit next. Next would be the same thing as actually clicking on the arrow. Basically what you're doing is you're telling it which way to go. So it's going to continue going down here to the end, down here to the end, up here, and now it hits another branch point. Well, I want to continue going straight, so I'll either click the arrow here or hit next. And it continues going and going all the way around until it hits this branch point. Well, now where do we want to go? Well, let's go this way. And when we get to the end, we'll continue going this way. So now here's the start. It goes down here, over, all the way around counterclockwise. And when it gets to here, it continues going down this line to the end. And this is considered one chain, as you can see. Select entities to start a new chain, which would be number 2, or modify the active chain. Let's hit unselect and do one more thing before we finish this lesson. So now let's cancel this geometry out. And I'm just going to select these pieces of geometry here and hit delete on my keyboard. Let's go back into toolpaths and start the contour toolpath again, which will bring up the chaining dialog. We have some other options down here for start and end. So if I select here to start, we understand that it's going to start closest to that endpoint. But now I can adjust my start point by moving it forward. So now the tool would start here. So if we were to start a contour, this tool would enter here and then run around. We can also back up the start point. We can also reverse the direction. So if I selected the chain wrong, I could click this button now to reverse it. So now I'm going clockwise, which would be more of like climb milling if I'm compensating to the left and going around this. And we also have the ability to dynamically change the start point. When I click on that, you'll see position arrow and click to accept. So notice I can just move this mouse around anywhere. Maybe I want to start right there. I click, and now the start point is there. We'll explore these other options in the next lesson.